There are things that shouldn't be seen, and he never stopped looking. In 2019, a security camera at a metro station in Oslo captured something that would make monitoring technicians question their own sanity. For 17 uninterrupted hours, a man stood on platform 7, completely motionless, staring directly at the camera. His eyes never closed, not once. The case was filed as Incident 0412 and classified as unsolved by Norwegian authorities. But what really happened that night remains one of the most disturbing mysteries of the modern era. The first reports emerged when Magnus Eriksson, night shift security supervisor, noticed an anomaly on the monitors. "I thought the camera had frozen," he stated in his official testimony, "but then I saw other people passing in the background, only he was standing still." The man was wearing a gray overcoat, dark trousers, and a brown leather briefcase. Nothing about his appearance seemed out of the ordinary, except for one detail that Magnus would only notice hours later. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, fixed on the camera lens. Platform 7 at Oslo Central Station is known for its constant movement, even during the early hours of the morning. Trains pass every 12 minutes. Hundreds of people circulate through the place daily. But on that October night, between 11:47 p.m. and 4:53 p.m. the following day, that man didn't move an inch. The recordings show passengers passing by him, some looking curiously, others completely oblivious. No one stopped to ask if he was okay. No one called for help. It was as if he were invisible to everyone except the cameras. Magnus spent the first 3 hours believing he was just a homeless person looking for shelter. This was common in stations during the Scandinavian winter, but when the next shift arrived at 6 a.m. and the man was still in exactly the same position, something changed. "I asked my colleague to check the recordings," reported Magnus. "He returned 5 minutes later, pale. He said the man hadn't blinked once in 6 hours. They decided to review the footage in fast motion. The result was disconcerting. As the world around them moved in fast motion, that man remained like a wax statue." The decision to send security guards to the platform was made at 9:15 a.m. 2 agents were dispatched with the mission of approaching the individual and checking his condition. The cameras capture the moment they approach, speak to him, and wave in front of his face. No reaction. One of the security guards then touches his shoulder, and it is at this moment that something happens that would make the investigators review the footage hundreds of times. The man slowly turns his head towards the security guard, his eyes still open and fixed, but now directed at a new target. 3 seconds later, he simply walks towards the stairs and disappears from the station. What no one expected was that this would only be the first sighting. In the following weeks, reports began to emerge from other European cities, Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, always the same pattern, always the same man, always the eyes that never blinked, and always, invariably, staring directly at the security cameras as if he knew exactly where they were installed. The first concrete evidence that case 0412 was not an isolated incident came from Berlin, just 11 days after the Oslo event. A security camera at Alexanderplatz station recorded a man with the same physical characteristics: gray overcoat, brown briefcase, rigid posture. This time he stayed for only 9 hours, but the pattern was identical: eyes open, fixed on the camera without a single blink. German authorities, when contacted by the Norwegian police, initially dismissed the connection as a coincidence until they compared the images side by side. The facial analysis performed by biometrics experts revealed something impressive. The probability of it being the same person was 94.7%, but there was a problem. The camera metadata indicated that both events occurred only 48 hours apart between the last recording in Oslo and the first in Berlin. Considering that the man was seen leaving the Norwegian station at 4:53 p.m. and appeared in Berlin at 2:15 a.m. the following morning, this was perfectly possible. However, no one was able to track down any train tickets, flights, or hotel registrations under any identification that matched his description.
The third sighting occurred in Amsterdam at Central Station just a week later. This time, a witness decided to film the man with their cell phone. The video, which would later leak onto the internet, generating millions of views, displays exactly what the security guards had described: a completely motionless man, eyes bulging and unblinking, staring at a fixed point. In the video, which lasts 3 minutes and 40 seconds, it is possible to hear the witness's nervous voice: "He's not breathing. My God, he's not breathing." But subsequent analysis of the video confirmed subtle movements in his chest, indicating breathing, although at an abnormally low frequency. It was in Paris that the case took on a truly disturbing dimension. At the Gare du Nord, the man was spotted not by one, but by 17 different cameras over 14 hours. French security technicians were able to map his behavior with millimeter precision. He entered the station at 11:12 p.m., walked directly to Platform 5, positioned himself at a specific angle that allowed 5 cameras to capture him simultaneously, and remained there until 1:07 p.m. the following day. All this time, his eyes moved only once, at 7:33 a.m., when he redirected his gaze from one camera to another, following the movement of a technician who was performing maintenance on the system. Europol was officially activated in November 2019, when the number of sightings reached 12 in 5 different countries. A special task force, codenamed Project Observer, was created with the mission of identifying and locating the individual. Psychologists were consulted to draw up a behavioral profile. The initial theory was that it was a performance artist or activist making some kind of silent protest against mass surveillance. But this theory crumbled when investigators discovered that the man always chose times and places where his presence would cause the least public impact, as if he wanted to be seen only by the cameras, not by people. Dr. Henrik Voss, a neuroscientist consulted by Europol, presented an analysis that left investigators even more confused. The act of not blinking for prolonged periods causes irreversible damage to the cornea. After 2 hours without blinking, the pain becomes insufferable. After 6 hours, the person may suffer ulcerations and permanent vision loss. What we're seeing here completely challenges our understanding of human physiology. He suggested that the individual might be under the influence of powerful drugs or suffering from an extremely rare neurological condition. But none of these explanations answered the central question: why? In December 2019, a data analyst named Sofia Castellanos made a discovery that would completely change the direction of the investigation. Working independently in Barcelona, Sofia had a peculiar habit of studying patterns in urban data as a hobby. When she read about case 012 on internet forums, something caught her attention. The dates and locations of the sightings were not random. Using geographic mapping and temporal analysis software, she plotted all 12 confirmed sightings on a map of Europe. The result was shocking. The points formed a perfect spiral, slowly converging towards a still undetermined central point. Even more disturbing was the temporal pattern. Sophia discovered that the intervals between sightings followed a specific mathematical sequence: 11 days, 7 days, 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. The sequence was accelerating, approaching something. "It's as if it were on a countdown," Sophia wrote in her report submitted to Europol, "and if the pattern continues, the next sightings will happen only hours apart." Europol initially dismissed the analysis as coincidence, but when the 13th sighting occurred exactly where and when Sophia had predicted, she was immediately recruited to the task force. The 13th sighting took place in Lyon, France, and brought a disturbing new element. For the first time, the man was not alone. Cameras capture a child, apparently 8 or 9 years old, approaching him with a red balloon in hand. The child stops, looks at the man, then at the camera, and then back at the man. For 43 seconds they remain like this, the child looking at him looking at the camera. Then the child drops the balloon and runs away, visibly frightened. The balloon floats slowly towards the man and touches his leg. He does not react, not even when the balloon bursts 3 minutes later with the heat from a nearby heating system. Authorities were able to identify and interview the child, a boy named Luca. His testimony, given in the presence of his parents and a child psychologist, was transcribed and remains in the case files. He was looking through me, not at me, through me, as if I were made of glass, and his eyes were like doll eyes. You know when you look at a doll and it seems to be looking, but it's not actually looking at anything? It was like that, but worse, because I knew he was seeing something, it just wasn't me. The psychologist noted that Luca refused to sleep without the lights on for 3 weeks after the incident. Sophia continued refining her calculations and made a bold prediction. Based on the spiral pattern and temporal acceleration, the final epicenter would be Prague, Czech Republic, specifically Prague Central Station, and the culminating event would occur between December 28th and December 31st, 2020. Europol, now taking her analysis seriously, positioned discrete surveillance teams at the station. Additional cameras were installed. Undercover agents were strategically deployed. For the first time, they would have the chance to confront the man who never blinked directly, with adequate preparation and in sufficient numbers to guarantee his arrest.
The discovery of the reflection in Prague led investigators to review all previous recordings with a new protocol, searching not only for the man directly, but also for his reflections in surfaces around the stations. What they found was deeply disconcerting. In 8 of the 13 sightings, there were additional reflections of the man at angles that should be impossible. In Oslo, his reflection appeared in a train window 23 minutes before he physically entered the station. In Berlin, a puddle of water on the ground showed his inverted reflection, but when the cameras were paused and analyzed frame by frame, his physical image showed that he was looking up, not down. The big turning point in the case came when a forensic technician examining the Paris footage with state-of-the-art facial recognition software decided to zoom in on the man's eyes at maximum resolution. What he discovered chilled his blood. Reflected in the man's pupils, digitally magnified hundreds of times, was an image, not the environment around him as would be expected, but something completely different. It appeared to be a dimly lit room with concrete walls and what appeared to be medical or scientific equipment. Even more disturbing, in the reflection there were other people, at least 3 humanoid figures, completely motionless, all with their eyes open. Europol immediately classified this discovery as highly sensitive and expanded the investigation to include possibilities that previously seemed absurd: kidnapping, illegal experiments, even human trafficking for unknown purposes. A special team was formed to try to identify the location of the room seen in the reflection. Architects and engineers analyzed the visible structural features. The image quality was terrible, but some details were discernible: exposed pipes in the ceiling, a specific type of tile on the floor, what appeared to be a partially visible number on a wall, 87-B. Meanwhile, the sightings continued, but now with alarming frequency. January 2020 recorded 17 new cases, no longer just in train stations, but also in airports, shopping malls, and even on street traffic cameras. Always the same man, always the same open eyes, always staring directly into the lenses. But now there was a disturbing variation. In some of the new sightings, he wasn't alone. There were others. 3 in Milan, 5 in Munich, 8 in Warsaw. All in overcoats, all motionless, all with fixed, unblinking eyes. It was as if they were multiplying. A baker in Brussels was the first person to actually try to physically interact with one of them for an extended period. François Dubois was closing his bakery when he noticed a man standing in front of the neighboring shop's security camera for over 3 hours. Concerned and slightly irritated, François crossed the street and confronted the individual. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" No answer.
Francois then did something that the trained security guards hadn't done. He held the man's face with both hands and forced direct eye contact. What happened in the next 10 seconds was captured by the same security camera the man was staring at. Francois froze, his hands still holding the man's face. His own eyes widened, his mouth opened as if to scream, but no sound came out. After 10 eternal seconds, he released the man and staggered backward, tripping and falling seated on the sidewalk. The man remained motionless. Francois remained seated, trembling violently for almost 20 minutes before passers-by called an ambulance. At the hospital, he was catatonic. 3 days later, when he finally managed to speak, all he said, repeatedly whispering like a mantra, was, "They are watching. They have always been watching, and now they have seen me." Francois Dubois was never the same again, and to this day refuses to be in any environment with security cameras. In February 2020, Europol brought in an unconventional consultant for the case, Dr. Dmitry Kovac, a Czech neuroscientist specializing in altered states of consciousness and dissociative phenomena. Kovac had a controversial reputation in the scientific community for his theories on non-local consciousness and perceptual projection. Many considered him a charlatan, but his previous work with victims of severe trauma had produced documented results that mainstream science could not explain. Desperate for answers, the task force decided to hear what he had to say. After reviewing all the evidence, recordings, and testimonies, Kovac presented a theory that left the room in an uneasy silence. "These are not men looking at cameras," he declared. "They are conduits, channels. What you are seeing are bodies held in a specific state of suspended consciousness, being used as viewing doors." When asked what this meant, he explained, "Imagine that consciousness can be separated from the body, projected to another place. These individuals may be physically present at the stations, but their consciousnesses are elsewhere, and something or someone is using their bodies as observation points, literally looking through them into our world." Kovac's theory was met with skepticism, but he had data to support his hypothesis. He pointed to the complete absence of useful DNA or fingerprints collected in the few cases where the individuals were touched. Human skin constantly sheds cells. It's biologically impossible to touch something without leaving a material trace, unless the body isn't functioning biologically in the normal way, unless it's in a state of near complete stasis with metabolic processes reduced to an absolute minimum. He then showed thermal analyses of some of the recordings. The individuals registered body temperatures of only 28 to 30 degrees Celsius, significantly below the normal human temperature of 36 to 37 degrees. Kovac proposed an experiment. If his theory was correct, there should be a central source, a physical location where the bodies were being kept and from which the projection was being coordinated. He suggested using triangulation based on the patterns of appearance. If we map not only where they appear, but when and for how long, we can retroactively calculate a point of origin, a place from which all these events are being orchestrated. Sofia Castellanos, the data analyst, immediately volunteered to work with Kovac on the calculations. For 2 weeks, they processed terabytes of data, including precise timestamps, durations of appearance, and even factors such as weather conditions and population density in the affected areas. The result of the analysis pointed to a specific region, an abandoned industrial area on the outskirts of Ostrava, Czech Republic. More specifically, to a building complex that had been a pharmaceutical research center in the 1980s, abruptly closed in 1991 after the dissolution of Czechoslovakia. Public records indicated that the site had been abandoned for nearly 30 years, but recent satellite images showed subtle signs of activity: abnormal heat patterns emanating from underground structures, vehicles occasionally parked in specific areas, and most intriguingly, a disproportionate amount of electricity being consumed in a supposedly deactivated location. The decision to investigate the complex in Ostrava was made quickly, but not without controversy. Officially, there was no proven crime, no legal warrant, no clear jurisdiction, but the growing number of sightings, now exceeding 50 cases across Europe, and the deteriorating mental state of François Dubois and other witnesses who had direct contact, forced the authorities to intervene. A discreet tactical team was assembled, including Europol agents, Czech special forces, 2 doctors, and curiously, at the insistent request of Dr. Kovac, a technician specializing in blocking electronic signals. "If I'm right about what we're going to find," Kovac warned, "you'll want to have the ability to cut off any kind of transmission immediately."
The operation in Ostrava was scheduled for the early morning of March 8, 2020, at 3 a.m., when urban activity would be at its minimum and cloud cover would maximize secrecy. The 17-person team approached the complex using unmarked civilian vehicles, parking 300 meters away. Dr. Kovac insisted on personally overseeing the incursion, despite the protests of the operation commander. "You won't understand what you're seeing without me," he argued, and more importantly, you could make the wrong choice at the wrong time. Reluctantly, he was allowed to enter, but only after the area was declared secure. The agents' body cameras captured every moment of the approach. The complex consisted of 5 main buildings connected by covered walkways, all showing decades of neglect: broken windows, graffiti on the exterior walls, wild vegetation encroaching on the structures. But there were disturbing inconsistencies. Some doors had new locks, gleaming under the light of the flashlights. Modern electrical cables snaked along the exterior walls, leading downwards toward what was presumably a basement. And even stranger, there was absolutely no sound. No birds, no insects, no noise from nocturnal animals. Just an oppressive silence that made even the team's breathing seem deafening. The main entrance was locked, but not openly. The tactical team forced their way in within 40 seconds. The interior was exactly what one would expect from a building abandoned for 3 decades. Destroyed furniture, papers scattered on the floor, damp stains on the walls, the unmistakable smell of mold and decay. But on the 3rd floor of the central building, they encountered the first anomaly: a reinforced metal door, completely out of place amidst the surrounding deterioration. The door was warm to the touch, and a low, continuous electrical hum emanated from behind it. The lock was electronic, modern, and highly secure. It took the digital intrusion specialist 12 minutes to unlock it. Behind the door was a descending concrete staircase, illuminated by cold, white fluorescent LED lights. The walls were clean, recently painted light gray, and the air had a sterile chemical smell, like in a hospital. "This was recently built," whispered one of the agents, his voice echoing down the stairs. They descended 3 levels before reaching another door, this one unlocked. The commander gave a signal, and the team assumed tactical formation. He pushed the door open slowly. What they saw on the other side would make some of the most experienced agents freeze in place, momentarily forgetting all their training. It was a long corridor, perhaps 40 meters long, with the same sterile color scheme: gray walls, white linoleum floor, LED lights on the ceiling. But lined along both sides of the corridor were transparent glass doors, and behind each door a small illuminated individual room. And in each room there was a person, all standing, all wearing gray overcoats, all with brown briefcases at their feet, all completely still, all with their eyes open, fixed, without blinking. There were 23 rooms in total, 23 people, and when the body cameras captured their faces, facial recognition confirmed they were the same individuals from the sightings at stations, airports, and streets all over Europe. One of the doctors, Dr. Sarah Chen, approached the first glass door. She placed her hand on the glass and observed the figure inside. "Vital signs," she murmured, looking at a monitor mounted next to the door. The screen displayed biomedical data: heart rate of 23 beats per minute, body temperature of 29 degrees, brain activity showing patterns she had never seen in her career. "They are alive," she confirmed, her voice trembling slightly. "But they shouldn't be, not with these readings." It was then that Kovac entered the corridor,
passed by all the agents without saying anything, walked to the end of the corridor where there was a last door, this one without glass, just solid metal with a plaque that simply read, Observatory 87B. He turned to the commander with a grim expression. We found it. The door to Observatory 87B required 20 minutes of technical work to open, as it operated with a triple security system, biometric, numerical code, and a retinal scanner that the team had to completely disable. During that time, none of the figures in the glass rooms moved an inch. Dr. Chen conducted additional tests, tapping on the glass, shining bright lights, even using a portable speaker with high-frequency sounds. No reaction. It's as if they're not here, she reported. The bodies are present, functioning at a minimal level, but there's no one home, no response to external stimuli. It's vegetative but controlled, artificial. Kovacs simply nodded, as if she already knew exactly what she would find. When the door finally opened, it revealed not a room, but a vast circular space that clearly occupied the entirety of that subterranean level. The vaulted ceiling was covered in a tangle of cables, servers, and electronic equipment that pulsed with blue and green lights. But the center of the room was what captured everyone's attention. A vast circular structure resembling an inverted amphitheater with 23 workstations arranged in a perfect circle. At each workstation was a reclining chair, connected medical equipment, multiple monitors, and something that looked like a metallic helmet suspended by articulated robotic arms. The chairs were empty, but the monitors were all active, showing feeds from security cameras from dozens of different locations across Europe. In the very center of the circular structure was a larger computer terminal with a chair that was still warm. Someone had been there very recently. The team's IT technician cautiously approached and examined the screens. Jesus Christ, this is a massive surveillance network, he said, his voice rising an octave. He has access to thousands, maybe tens of thousands of security cameras, train stations, airports, traffic cameras, shopping malls, government buildings. This shouldn't be possible. The security protocols, the encryption. He stopped talking when he noticed what was on the central screen. A list of names, dates, locations, and a status next to each entry. 23 names with the status active, and below them a list of another 87 names with the status pending. Kovacs moved quickly to one of the empty workstations and began examining the equipment. He picked up one of the metal helmets, turning it over in his hands. Inside, there were hundreds of small electrodes arranged in a specific pattern, and something that looked like an intravenous injection interface integrated into the headrest. This is neural interface technology, he explained to the assembled team, but unlike anything I've ever seen in scientific literature. This here, he pointed to a specific component, can not only read brain activity, but write it, literally program specific neurological states. And these here, he indicated the IV tubes, are probably to keep the bodies in chemical stasis while consciousness is elsewhere. One of the agents found a physical file in a side cabinet. Inside was extensive documentation, mostly in Czech and Russian, with some documents in English. The headings varied: remote projection protocol, maintaining a host in a state of observation, viewing node calibration. One particularly disturbing document was a procedures manual that described in cold clinical detail how to prepare a subject for prolonged observation. Specific doses of sedatives, intravenous hydration protocols, techniques for keeping the eyes open through small transparent devices inserted under the eyelids, and instructions on how to anchor the observer's consciousness while allowing basic body mobility. There were also reports of observation sessions, describing what different operators had seen through their hosts. At the back of the room was another smaller door with a red warning sign, Core, Restricted Access, Alpha Level. The door was ajar, and a pulsating red light emanated from within. The commander signaled for his team to remain in the observatory, while he, 2 agents, Kovacs and Dr. Chen, investigated. They entered a smaller, darker room dominated by a single massive server occupying an entire wall, humming and pulsing with intense activity. On the opposite wall was a whiteboard with complex diagrams, mathematical equations, and at the top, written in large red letters, a phrase in English: "They must never know they are seen." Below it, a list of future dates extending to 2027, each marked with a different city. And at the bottom of the board, a handwritten question, seemingly unanswered. How many observers before they are noticed?
Dr. Chen was the first to notice something alarming on the central server monitors. "Network activity is increasing," she said, pointing to graphs that showed sudden spikes in data transfer. "Something is being transmitted, right now, in real time." The IT technician rushed to the terminal and began tracking the active connections. His face paled as he read the data. "There are 23 data streams going out of here simultaneously. High-resolution video, biometric data, GPS coordinates, and they're being sent to... Oh my God, I can't trace the destination. The connection is being routed from hundreds of proxies, jumping between servers in dozens of countries." He stopped, his fingers freezing on the keyboard. "Wait, the feeds aren't coming from the external security cameras. They're coming from inside this facility." The realization hit everyone at once. The 23 individuals in the glass rooms weren't projecting their consciousnesses outward to observe through cameras. It was the opposite. They were the cameras. Someone, from somewhere, was looking through their eyes, seeing exactly what the operations team was doing at that very moment. "Cut everything off," shouted the commander. "Cut the power, block the signals, now." The electronic jamming specialist began to work frantically, but before he could activate his equipment, all the observatory screens flashed simultaneously. And then, one by one, they began to display the same thing. A live camera feed showing the room where they were, filmed from 23 different angles through the eyes of the 23 motionless individuals in the hallway. Kovacs slowly approached one of the monitors, studying the image. "It's not just surveillance," he said quietly. "It's presence. Whoever is on the other side isn't just passively watching. They are here, experiencing this space through these bodies. The question is, who are they?" As if in response, text began to appear on the screens, one letter at a time, slowly, deliberately. "Project Panoptic, Phase 3 of 7. You shouldn't have come. Now you are part of the experiment." The text stopped, and for 10 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then a new line. "Observation works in both directions." It was at this moment that Dr. Chen noticed something on her own medical equipment monitors that she had brought. "Commander," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm detecting changes in the brain patterns of 3 team members. Abnormal alpha waves, similar to what we saw on the subjects in the rooms." She checked again, as if she didn't believe her own data. "It's as if something is trying to establish a connection, an interface." The commander immediately ordered evacuation, but as the team began to move toward the exit, the observatory's pneumatic doors slammed shut with a metallic hiss. The red emergency lights came on, and from the speakers embedded in the walls, a voice began to speak. But it wasn't one voice, it was several voices speaking in perfect unison, male and female, young and old, in multiple overlapping languages. The message was confused, fragmented, as if multiple consciousnesses were trying to communicate through a single channel. "We observe. We always observe. You build cameras. You facilitate our work. Each lens is a door. Each screen is a window. You invited us. You document everything. You share everything. And we see. We always see. The project began when you placed the first camera. We just waited. We waited until there were enough cameras. And now there are. Millions, billions, everywhere, observing everything. And through them, we also observe." The transmission stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence even more disturbing than the overlapping voices. Kovacs was completely still, tears silently streaming from his face. "I was wrong," he whispered. "These weren't humans projecting consciousness through bodies. It's something using human bodies as anchor points to enter, to observe our world. And the more they observe, the stronger the connection becomes. Every time someone looks at them, every time a camera captures them, every viewing of a video about them." He paused, the horrifying realization setting in. "We are feeding this. Attention is what they want. The observation is two-way. The more we observe them, the more they can observe us back." He turned to the agent's body cameras. "Turn everything off. All cameras, all recordings. Now.
before it's too late. The electronic lockout specialist finally managed to activate his equipment, creating a bubble of interference that cut off all wireless transmissions in the facility. Immediately, the monitors went black, the hum of the servers subsided, and the pneumatic doors released with a mechanical click. "We have a 3-minute window before the backup systems activate," he warned. The team needed no further encouragement. They ran down the corridor of glass rooms, their boots echoing on the white linoleum. But as they passed the rooms, something had changed. The 23 individuals who had remained perfectly still for hours now had their heads turned, all looking directly at the running agents, all following the movement with their unblinking eyes. And on some of them, something that could be interpreted as a smile began to form at the corners of their mouths. The team climbed the stairs in controlled panic, training maintaining some order while instinct screamed to simply run. But when they reached the 3rd floor of the main building, they found something that wasn't there when they entered. Footprints, dozens of them, in the dust of the abandoned ground, leading in multiple directions. Fresh footprints, not yet settled. "We weren't alone," one of the agents whispered. "We were never alone here." The commander made a quick gesture. Tactical movement, check corners, get out as fast as possible. They would emerge from the complex 6 minutes after starting the evacuation, all accounted for, all seemingly unharmed. But 3 of them, 2 agents and the technician, had distant expressions, vacant stares, and when questioned, they wouldn't remember anything from the last 10 minutes. The vehicles sped off, and when they were 5 kilometers away, a massive explosion lit the night behind them. The Ostrava complex was ablaze, a conflagration so intense it would be visible from neighboring towns. Firefighters would take 6 hours to control the fire, and when they finally could enter, they would find nothing but charred ruins. No bodies, no recognizable equipment, no physical evidence of the underground observatory. The temperature of the fire had been so extreme that it melted even the reinforced concrete structures. Arson investigators would determine that multiple ignition points had been activated simultaneously, but they would never be able to explain how or by whom. It was as if the place had self-destructed. Europol immediately implemented an information containment protocol. Everyone involved in the operation signed non-disclosure agreements under threat of arrest. The Case 412 files were reclassified as cosmic level, access denied, the highest level of secrecy available. The official story was that the Ostrava complex was an abandoned pharmaceutical laboratory where criminals were producing synthetic drugs, and that the police operation had resulted in an accidental explosion. The media accepted this narrative without much questioning. The viral videos of the man who never blinks were systematically removed from online platforms, cited as disturbing content or malicious misinformation. Within weeks, the few remaining references were buried under layers of obviously false conspiracy theories, making it impossible to separate fact from fiction. But the sightings didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. March 2020 saw 38 new cases reported. April had 52. But now there was a critical difference. The authorities stopped investigating. Reports were filed away, labeled collective hallucination or social panic related to the pandemic. After all, the world had bigger problems at that moment. A virus was spreading globally, lockdowns were being implemented, and a man standing motionless in a train station was the least of public concerns. Some investigators suggested that this was no coincidence, that the timing of the pandemic provided the perfect cover for Project Panopticon to continue without public scrutiny. But these suggestions were quickly silenced. Of the 17 team members who entered the Ostrava complex, 14 reported persistent sleep disturbances in the following months. 8 developed an unexplained phobia of cameras. 5 requested transfers to positions that did not involve any kind of surveillance work. And the 3 who had abnormal brain patterns detected, agents Mikhail Strand, Lucia Rossi, and technician James Park, all developed a disturbing habit. Every 2 or 3 days, without warning, they stop what they are doing, stand completely still for exactly 17 minutes, staring fixedly at the nearest spot where they know there is a security camera. When the episode ends, they have no memory of it having happened. Therapy didn't help. Medication didn't help. And with each passing month, the episodes get slightly longer. 17 minutes became 18, then 19. Dr. Chen, discreetly monitoring them, estimates that in approximately 18 months, they will be experiencing the same symptoms of the 23 individuals they encountered in that underground corridor. Kovacs disappeared 6 weeks after the Ostrava operation. His Prague apartment was found empty, but organized, as if he had calmly departed in a planned manner. On the wall of his office, he had left a complete mural. Photographs, diagrams, maps connected by red lines, and hundreds of pages of handwritten notes. At the center of everything, a single phrase circled multiple times. Observation collapses the wave function. They exist because we observe them. We stop looking, they lose anchoring. Investigators who studied his mural theorized that Kovacs left in search of a solution, a way to reverse or at least contain Project Panopticon. Some believe he is still out there, working in secret. Others suspect something darker, that he has become exactly what he was trying to fight, just another motionless observer in some lost European station. In January 2021, exactly 1 year after the official identification of Case 412, Sofia